Thank you, Pnina, Colonel, for that kind introduction. It's an honor to be with you, and thank you to the International Association of Jewish Lawyers and Jurists for everything you do for our people and for our better world. Meir Lintzen, our president, thank you for your leadership and truly for the fight of our ages. I want to begin by apologizing a bit for my appearance. I usually dress more formally, usually clean shaven. This week, sadly, we lost my stepfather, and today is the final day of Shiva, and that's why I'm a little bit less formal. But I do want to, as this is my first public appearance since our family's loss, I do want to dedicate this to my stepfather, Nissan Pardo, Nissan Ben Israel, a pilot in the Israeli Air Force, a proud, committed Jew who helped model for me the commitment not only to serving my country, but to fighting for the Jewish people. So this is dedicated to him. 2.5 weeks ago, my boss, Secretary Pompeo, stood at the podium next to Prime Minister Netanyahu and made an announcement. That announcement is that the United States of America will now regard the global BDS movement as anti-Semitic. We will identify organizations that engage in that anti-Semitic conduct, and that we will look to defund those organizations. This is one of a series of events that the United States has engaged in, and that the State Department has engaged in, to bring legal power to the fight against Jew hatred around the world. Months ago, the State Department announced the repudiation of the so-called Hansel memo, a Carter administration era memo regarding settlements in Judea and Samaria. And so now the State Department's policy, stated publicly, is that the United States will no longer regard settlements in Judea and Samaria as per se violations of international law. The State Department announced that the ICC will be sanctioned, and specifically any ICC prosecutor that targets American soldiers attempting to call Americans war criminals or Israelis. The Secretary of State was very clear that also Israeli soldiers, if the ICC plans to target the brave fighters of the IDF or the US Armed Forces as war criminals, they will be sanctioned. In fact, visas will be denied, and that has already happened. Meaning that if you're going to go after the soldiers of the IDF or the US Armed Forces, you're not going to be traveling to Disneyland. As you know, the United States left the UN Human Rights Council because of anti-Semitism in that body. And last December, in an historic, groundbreaking move, the President of the United States issued an executive order that applied Title VI civil rights protection to Jewish students on campuses throughout the United States. I was at the White House when he signed it, and he said very clearly, looked at the camera, he said, let me make this very clear. If you are a university and you are promoting the harassment and discrimination of your Jewish students, this is going to be very expensive for you. You're going to lose a lot of money. I gave these examples because, as you know so well, the fight against anti-Semitism, the fight globally against Jew hatred, is becoming increasingly a legal fight. And in the last 2 years, since my appointment as United States Special Envoy, I have worked very, very closely with organizations that bring that legal expertise to our fight. Great organizations like yours, but also like the Brandeis Center, like the Lawfare Project, like Shurat Hadin, or the legal team of Stand With Us. The list goes on, but more and more we see that we absolutely got to use legal expertise and current law to fight Jew hatred. So now in this rise, as we saw in this video that you just showed, anti-Semitism has been rising all over the world. It's been rising internationally for over a decade now. It's been rising from the far right, the ethnic supremacists and neo-Nazis of the far right, who shoot at synagogues, hold despicable torch-lit rallies at night, reminiscent of an age from which we thought we had graduated long ago. These are the anti-Semites of vile internet chat rooms where open, unvarnished hate is trafficked in without constraint. But it's also been rising from the far left. This is the anti-Semitic camp that disguises its Jew hatred as political speech, as human rights talk. These are the Jew haters who talk about anti-Zionism and anti-Israel as their chief manifestation of anti-Semitism. It's been rising dramatically. We saw it in the former iteration of the UK Labour Party. We see it on college campuses, not only in the United States, but throughout the world. I meet with Jewish student leaders in Europe, and I hear the same things in Europe as I hear in the United States, which is that the price of safety on far too many university campuses is that a student divorce himself or herself completely from any connection to the land of Israel, any connection to Jewish peoplehood, to Jewish national self-determination. And of course, one can't mention the Z word, Zionism. One does so positively, that is, one mentions the word Zionism in any positive context only at their own peril. And anti-Semitism has been rising from militant Islam as well. This is the chief source of violence against Jews in Western Europe. It's the reason why, after a speech I gave on Shabbat at a Paris synagogue, I was told by a fellow congregant, remove your kippah. It's not safe to walk out in Paris with a kippah. By the way, I don't pass judgment about whether that's true or not, whether that's well-founded advice or not. That's beside the point, and one can debate that. But the fact that prominent Jews in the French Jewish community feel that way is evidence enough of the urgent challenges we face. Let me give you a sense of what our priorities have been over the last 2 years since my appointment as Special Envoy. Our lines of effort internationally against this rising global scourge of Jew hatred. First and foremost, physical safety. We work to ensure that every Jewish community is protected, because if one does not feel safe, if you can't leave your home and know that you're protected, or if you can't put your kids on a school bus or send them to school and know that they're safe, you cannot have quality of life. And so we work with our allies around the world to ensure that sufficient resources are devoted to protecting the Jewish community, ensuring physical safety. By the way, physical safety being the chief responsibility of any sovereign to its citizenry. Second of all, hate crimes. Penina mentioned in the introduction that I'm a former prosecutor. Well, I've prosecuted hate crimes, and I know how important it is that law enforcement authorities make the statement through their action and through their criminal prosecutions that a violent crime committed with hate as a motive is worse and is more morally reprehensible than the same crime committed for a different motive. And so it is so important that hate crimes be vigorously investigated, appropriately prosecuted, and punished. I had the great privilege of working with law enforcement leaders from 7 separate German states who came together to talk about how best to investigate and prosecute hate crimes. This is so important. I've met with prosecutors around the world on this issue, and this is something really critically important to sending the message to the haters around the world regarding hate crimes. Third, the Ira definition of anti-Semitism. This is so deeply important because to confront a threat appropriately, one has to understand the threat. One has to define it. And we have a vehicle for doing that, and it's a very good vehicle. If a country hasn't adopted the Ira definition, my first ask diplomatically is that they do so. Thankfully, more and more countries have adopted the Ira definition. Argentina very recently, 2 Muslim majority countries adopted it, Kosovo by executive action, and by formal parliamentary action, Albania very recently adopted the Ira definition. Incredible developments. I'm proud to say that my team and I negotiated a memorandum of understanding with Bahrain to fight anti-Semitism together around the world. And that groundbreaking agreement adopts the Ira definition, the first Arab entity to use the Ira definition to define what anti-Semitism is. It's so important that every country does so, and that every local authority does so, including universities and police agencies and cities. And so that has been a key part of our work, and we're incredibly gratified by advancements in this area. After our MOU with Bahrain, the Global Imams Council, the largest NGO of Muslim faith leaders in the world, adopted the Ira definition of anti-Semitism. Again, game-changing. The internet is a key line of effort for us. Look, there's a reason why anti-Semitism has been rising for a decade now. It's driven by these powerful platforms that have given anti-Semites, and not just anti-Semites, but haters of all stripes, unprecedented global reach. They have trafficked in their ideology, spread it with unprecedented speed, recruited adherents with greater efficacy than we've ever seen. A recent European study found that the period of time required to radicalize a person to violence, actually to violent action, is a fraction of the time when performed online as compared with radicalization through traditional means, face-to-face interaction, rallies, and so forth. So there's the data. This has real effects. And so 2 months ago, we broadcast the first ever US government-sponsored conference focused on combating internet anti-Semitism, first of its kind, never before happened. And that's why this has been such a priority for us. If we can unlock this phenomenon of online hate, while at the same time, of course, embracing and championing our free speech values, we can elevate humanity, not only solve the problem of anti-Semitism, but truly fix so many things that are wrong with societies around the world. This is a key policy priority for us. And our conference, we hope, will be an important first step. And our last line of effort is this. These measures I've outlined so far are all inherently defensive. And that's appropriate. Anti-Semitism, of course, is an assault on the Jewish people, in fact, on civilization itself. And one has to defend against onslaughts of this kind. But as we all know, from military experience or from sports, you can't win a battle or a game if all you do is play defense. You also have to go on the offense. How does one go on the offense against anti-Semitism? So our last policy priority seeks to do just that. Going on the offense against anti-Semitism means driving a philo-Semitic narrative so that we celebrate and understand the deep and profound history of the Jewish people and the contributions of the Jewish people and of Judaism to civilization. Can one tell the story of, well, the United States or England or France or Germany or Russia, Poland, Hungary, without talking about the Jewish history of these countries? I'll give you an example. Germany, now we're on the cusp of year 2021. In year 2021, Germany will commemorate 1,700 years of Jewish history in Germany. So I've had the privilege of working with our German interlocutors to ask the question, okay, what will this year be? What is the content of the message? What is the curriculum that will be driven to every kid in every classroom in every city in Germany, so that every single German child knows not only that it's 1,700 years, but knows a little bit about the content of those years? And that means not only Jewish influence and the influence of Jewish values on Germany, but the other way around. I asked the question, how many German kids know that the vernacular language of Ashkenazi Judaism from Russia to England is a form of German? The answer is not many. Now let's bring it to the United States. In the United States, we have a month endorsed by Congress and recognized by every single president of the United States for 40 years, called Jewish American Heritage Month. A period of time dedicated to celebrating, appreciating the Jewish people and Jewish heritage in America. You know what happens during that month? Not much. And so a lot of our focus has been to develop and craft. I'm proud to say we launched the Jewish Heritage Initiative specifically to develop and craft a curriculum and public messaging to drive that content of the Jewish people, the Jewish story, Jewish history, and Jewish contributions to every city in these important countries. That's how you go on the offense against Jew hatred, by turning the tables and shouting from the rooftops what the Jewish people have meant to these countries and to civilization itself. Let me close with some good news, because let me tell you, there is a lot of good news in this fight of our times against this ancient and recurring, this tireless, insatiable plague of Jew hatred. We focus on the bad news as well. We should, because that's how you make the world a better place, but we cannot ignore the good news. Piece of good news number one is that we have remarkable allies and partners around the world who get it, who understand that the fight against anti-Semitism isn't only a fight for the safety of the Jewish people. It's a fight for civilization itself. These great leaders understand that they're fighting for the country or the continent or the world that their children will inherit. And these are great leaders at all levels. I've had the privilege to work with them over the last 2 years, from heads of government level to ministers to parliamentarians to appointed anti-Semitism coordinators, almost all of them not Jewish, who are not only allies in this fight, they are champions of this fight. And they are the reason why remarkable developments have happened. Curricula have been rewritten in countries. Every single Polish police officer is trained on hate crimes investigations. It's the reason why the Ira definition has been adopted by country after country. It's the reason why President Macron declared that BDS is unacceptable. It's the reason why the German Bundestag and the Austrian National Parliament passed measures officially branding BDS as anti-Semitism. It's the reason why, at a time of great peril in the United Kingdom, when the Jewish community said our future is being threatened by the hijacking of a major political party, it's the reason why that party lost in the election, and not only lost in exit polls, ordinary Brits said that anti-Semitism was one of the reasons they voted the way they voted. What a remarkable achievement that is. When rank and file citizens of a country say anti-Semitism is not the kind of future I want for my kids, that's a remarkable win. And there are so many more wins, and they're due to great people like Lords Eric Pickles and John Mann in the UK, or Frédéric Poitier in France, or Felix Klein in the UK, Katharina von Schnurbein in the EU, great leaders who are making a difference every single day in fighting Jew hatred. Piece of good news number two is that there is a state of Israel. The Jewish people do have national self-determination, and Israel's strength and excellence, a vibrant democracy, a beacon of human rights and tolerance, defended by a military excellent, known for its excellence throughout the world, yet committed to international humanitarian law, to the law of armed conflict. Now, Israel being a beacon of world-changing innovation, the success, the strength, the prominence, the excellence of the state of Israel makes the Jewish people stronger everywhere in the world and better able to combat anti-Semitism. And piece of good news number three is that despite rising anti-Semitism, the United States of America is still the most philo-Semitic country in the history of the world. And we are led by the most philo-Semitic administration we have ever had. From President Trump to Vice President Pence, to my boss, Secretary Pompeo, to Attorney General Barr, and so many others, we have never seen anything like this. We've combated anti-Semitism on the far right. We're the first administration to declare a violent white supremacist group as a terrorist organization, to combat Anti-Semitism on the right, President Trump signed the Never Again Education Act, ensuring that future generations of American children will learn about the Holocaust and understand where vile right-wing anti-Semitism can lead. To combat anti-Semitism on the left, President Trump signed that executive order I spoke about earlier, protecting Jews on campus, saying basically enough is enough with the nonsense going on our college campuses. We send our children to be educated. How dare we allow them to be harassed and discriminated against? Not anymore, said President Trump. We've combated anti-Semitism from militant Islam, which focuses on the existence of the State of Israel, as does anti-Semitism from the left, by supporting the State of Israel like never before. Whether it's closing the PLO office in Washington, D.C., whether it's defunding UNRWA so that U.S. tax money no longer prints anti-Semitic textbooks, defunding the PA's Pay for Slay program so that U.S. tax money doesn't go to pay monthly stipends to killers, whether it's recognizing Jerusalem and moving our embassy there, recognizing Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights, declaring that settlements are not per se illegal under international law. Of course, unveiling a peace vision for Judea and Samaria that recognizes historic Jewish claims there, while at the same time paving the way for Palestinian sovereignty and Palestinian statehood. And then, of course, leading the world to a better place by negotiating groundbreaking, game-changing peace agreements between Israel and our Arab allies, the Abraham Accords, that have meant such a difference to the Middle East. You know, I was at the White House when the Abraham Accords was signed, and a senior member of one of the Arab delegations ran up to me and said, "Don't think this will be a cold peace. We will do great things together." And I tell you, I was choked up to see that kind of embrace, that kind of real affection for the Jewish people in the State of Israel is really a new world. And so this is what our administration has done. And I tell you, we've never seen anything like it. And so there's a lot of good news in the world. And as we fight anti-Semitism, we have to remember that. And I want to close by asking for your help. You've already been remarkable. But key issues remain that require legal-based organizations to draw those distinctions. So, for example, the distinction between condemning anti-Semitism and censoring it is an important distinction every time we try to condemn anti-Semitism, every time we try to pass the Ira definition. Those who traffic in anti-Semitism will say, you're preventing us from you're censoring our speech. So we have to rely on lawyers to make the distinction between censorship and condemnation. And there are so many other areas where you have been so deeply helpful. And I know that you will continue to be deeply helpful. And I know as we work to fight this scourge, we can have no better partners than IJL as we work not only to banish Jew hatred, but truly to do tikkun olam b'malchut Shaddai and build that better world that our children and grandchildren so richly deserve. And so I say to you, Chazak u'Baruch, may you go from strength to strength. And I look forward to seeing your great work for many years to come. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this impressive presentation and for the impressive work you've been doing. I think we have a lot of ground there for collaborative efforts, maybe also in the future. And I have quite a few questions, so I will try to maybe go through some of them. Maybe I'll ask 3 questions, and then you can answer, and then we'll see if we have time for some more. So the one I'll start with, because it links to the last sentence, last point you were talking about, is can legal action, this is by Sam Sager, can legal actions be taken against internet platform providers to stop anti-Semitic propaganda, especially taking into account how to do it without limiting freedom of speech? So that's one question. Another question, there's a bunch of questions about the next administration, the Biden administration, and what is your evaluation, whether they will continue with the same line of efforts in combating anti-Semitism? What policies do you think they will maintain? What might change? And I will also ask another one about especially about also the BDS. Will the Biden administration, will they honor the current declaration with regard to BDS being anti-Semitic, and also with regard to Judea and Samaria? I'm looking for another more general question, and that is, do you think that anti-Semitism or combating anti-Semitism is more successful through political intervention, like legislative proclamation and diplomacy, or through legal action, court filings? So that's another question. We have some more questions, but let's start with these.
Great questions, all of them. So let me start with the first one. Why did I close my remarks in saying that we need organizations like you to draw these distinctions? Because these distinctions are ill understood. I gave one example of the difference between defining something as anti-Semitic and censoring it. Why should it be that so often when we try to pass the Ira definition, anti-Semitic groups will say, you can't do that. This is a violation of freedom of speech. What does this have anything to do with freedom of speech? One can condemn anti-Semitism while at the same time allow it, right? We had a Supreme Court case in the United States. Now, I realize, of course, that the United States is very different than Israel and Europe in terms of the breadth of our free speech protections. But let's talk about the United States, because that's an important part of the world, and a lot of speech comes from the United States, certainly on the internet. Supreme Court case that neo-Nazis had a right to march in Skokie, Illinois, famous case. Now, does that mean we can't condemn them as anti-Semites? Does that mean we can't call them what they are? It's a ridiculous idea to think that defining anti-Semitism as anti-Semitism has anything to do with limiting freedom of speech. Now, of course, the next question is, once you define something as anti-Semitic, what do you do about it? Well, there's a whole range of options. You can do nothing about it, you can condemn it, or you can imprison people for it. I'm not suggesting that would be illegal, but I'm just saying there's a whole range of options, but the response has nothing to do with the definition. And so we need, especially lawyers, not only policymakers, but we need legal organizations that are legal based, like yours, to draw these important distinctions. Now, moving to the internet, which was the first question, this is exactly what we're dealing with. So why did we do a conference 2 months ago? First ever US government-sponsored conference on addressing online hate. Why online hate? Hate is hate, right? Whether it's online, that's just a vehicle. Whether it's online or offline, it's the same basic thing, right? Yes, but online hate is so important and such a driver of the rise in anti-Semitism. And there's a basic question. What do you do about it? In the United States, where the First Amendment says even vile, despicable, poisonous speech is protected, what do you do when you have vile, despicable, poisonous speech that is poisoning the minds of a generation, that is luring, seducing people into these chat rooms where they're becoming radicalized? And online hate doesn't stay online, it moves offline into actual illegal activity. What do you do about it? That was the whole purpose of our conference. And I commend it, by the way. It's now on the State Department website. I commend it to all of you. It really is an important first step. And what we concluded is you can do a lot short of censorship. You can lobby advertisers to pull their ads and basically shut down all revenue from sites that are trafficking in anti-Semitism. Totally legal conduct. Why should we allow allow is the wrong word. Why should we not apply pressure to advertisers to pull their revenue dollars from anti-Semitic speech? You want to shut it down? You shut it down overnight by doing it. All kinds of other collaborations we saw could make a real difference. We also talked about measuring anti-Semitic speech on the internet because there's such a volume of it. And when you measure it and you look at the waves, the spikes and the troughs in the volume of anti-Semitism, you can actually predict what might happen offline and take steps to prevent it. So it's absolutely, we can do things in the realm of anti-Semitism online, and it's critical that we do so. Penina, you were going to say?
Yeah, because we have only 1 minute and a half left, so maybe
1 minute
just
and a half, I can answer all the other questions.
A short answer, especially about the next administration and what you think.
Are related. I can answer all three questions in a minute.
So here you have.
A lot of the questions were about what the next administration will do. Yeah. Obviously, I can't speak for the next administration. And if in fact it's going to be a Biden administration, my hope would be that they continue on the same path. After all, these are not the measures I've outlined aren't about politics or party. They're about policy and good policy. The fight against anti-Semitism, the fight for the Jewish people, the fight for that better world that we want our children to inherit should be a bipartisan fight, a nonpartisan fight. And so I would hope, I pray, although I can't speak for anyone else, but I would pray that any president of the United States would want to contribute, would want to continue on this important effort. And I know that if we do, like I said, we could have no better partner than IJL. And I encourage you to continue your phenomenal work, which has made such a difference, not only for the Jewish people, but has made such a difference for the world. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And again, it's an opportunity to thank you for the work you've been doing, and a special thanks also for taking the time and joining us in this sad week, and our condolences also to you and your family.
Thank you. But on a Penina, on a happy note, let me take this opportunity to congratulate publicly my friend and colleague who is speaking next, Minister Irwin Cotler, on his appointment as Canada's international envoy on anti-Semitism. Irwin is a friend, and Canada could not have made a better choice. This is a win for Canada, and it's a win for the world. And so Mazal Tov to my friend Irwin Cotler. I know he is going to do a fantastic job.
Yes, thank you. And I think he's already hearing you, and we will see to it later when we talk to him. Thank you again.
Thank you.